Discord. Oh, Good evening and happy Labor Day. My name is Ben Halfon. I am the co-author of Our Happy Divorce, How Ending Our Marriage Brought Us Closer Together. Over the past year, I've seen a lot of conversation in the divorce space around this topic that we have this evening. There's so many podcasts, blogs, etc. based around the general, sorry, I have a echo in there, topic on how to deal with a narcissist. Also, I've been personally asked on numerous occasions, questions like, what do I do if my ex is a narcissist? It has always bothered me a little bit because, in my opinion, and this is my opinion only, this label gets thrown around too casually and thus creates a roadblock to an amicable divorce. I just want to say that narcissist personality disorder, or as we will refer to it, NPD, is a very serious and dangerous mental illness or personality disorder. Like any disease, I feel it is important not to identify people by their illness, if they do, especially if they have not been diagnosed. It seems very common to label people considered self-centered or egotistical as a narcissist. But what exactly is narcissism? How common is narcissism? What is the continuum of a narcissist personality? And how do we know when someone we are living with has a narcissistic personality disorder? Those are just some of the questions that we will answer tonight. Like every week, we have the best in the business to help shed some light on the topic and give you the best advice possible. As always, I am joined by Susan Guthrie and Kate Anthony, my co-host. Susan Guthrie is the founder of Divorce in a Better Way, and she's the host of Divorce and Beyond podcast. Her podcasts over the years have over 4 million downloads, and Susan has 30 years of experience as a top family attorney and mediator. Kate Anthony is one of the most respected divorce coaches in the country. She helps women through the hardest decisions of their lives. Should I stay or should I go? She's also the host of the award-winning podcast, the Divorce and Survival podcast. So without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Kate Anthony and Susan Guthrie. Raise it.
Love it.
Well, here we all are again. How was everybody's long weekend?
Well,
pretty good. I mean, Kate's probably been taping that Divorce and Survival podcast all weekend.
Did I say it wrong? What did I say?
It's like the hardest thing for Ben to get.
I have some mental blocks. What?
I think that maybe,
Divorce
you
Survival
survived your
podcast.
own divorce,
The
Ben.
Divorce Survival Guide podcast. Yes.
I forget guide.
Yes, you forget guide. It's all good. It's all good. Yeah, I have not been taping my podcast. I have been lying in a state of shock and repose in the hellscape that is Los Angeles right now.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
All we need this year is a locust.
Like a locust. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't say it, Ben. Don't say it.
Well, that way, if it happens, we won't be that shocked. But it's been a while since we've all been together, and we picked a great topic as a reunion. But we have an even better guest.
That's right.
We are honored and grateful to be joined tonight by Michelle Dempsey. Michelle is a writer, mom, coach, speaker, and genuine girl power enthusiast. Michelle attended the university as a journalism major, American University as a she has so many schools. She graduated from Hofstra University's communication program with a bachelor's degree in communications, and then earned a double master's degree in education from Adelphi University. She is the host of Moms Moving On podcast, and she is a certified life coach as well as a National Association of Divorce Professional Certified Divorce Specialist, CDOS. Welcome, Michelle, to the podcast, to this live stream. You have quite you have more titles than on books.
Right. I didn't expect you to go for all that. Good for you. Thank you. You made me feel really good.
Well,
She's an overachiever, our Ben.
Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And so what is working with Michelle Dempsey like, and why are you doing what you do?
I'm doing what I do because for selfish reasons, essentially. I got separated 3.5 years ago, and all of my wonderful friends that surround me every day were happily married just a couple years in, pregnant with their second kids. And here I was going to bed every night by myself crying because I had nobody to vent to over the fact that I was now co-parenting a 2-year-old and felt helpless. I was navigating divorce. I was finding myself waking up every day with a stomach ache, checking my email to see where the negotiations were in my divorce process. I felt utterly alone. And I'm never alone. So that was the oddest part. And I realized the problem was I had nobody to relate to. And I thought back to my own upbringing when my mom got divorced. She had 2 best friends who also happened to get divorced at the same time. And they were like the first wives club, just like navigating this thing together. And I said, I got to do the same thing for myself. So I started writing about I was already writing for a bunch of motherhood publications. And I said, I'm going to shift my focus here and we're going to just focus on divorce. And I was writing about co-parenting and how it felt and dating after divorce. And all of these people started coming out of the woodwork like, hey, nobody else is saying this. Thank you for saying this. Thank you for making me feel seen. And over time, I grew a following, and lots and lots and lots of women would reach out every day asking if they could hire me. And I thought, well, for what? I'm giving you advice. And then I realized I do want to help in any way that I can. So that's why I became a coach. And that's why I continue to write what I write and share what I share. And now I've built the Moms Moving On membership community where women who cannot afford an attorney, a coach, a mediator, and just kind of like need somewhere to go for advice can log in and get all of that there and feel more empowered and less alone on their journey.
Well, and as far as your Instagram goes, I don't think I've seen more knowledge or more pertinent content than on your Instagram account. So where can people
appreciate that?
Where can people find your Instagram?
I am at the Michelle Dempsey.
All right. So before we get into this discussion, I want to try and help people understand narcissism. And over the past few weeks, I've been researching the topic. And I also hired one of the best therapists in the business to help give me some clinical information on narcissism. The consultant just happens to be my beautiful wife, Nadia Healthfond, of New Day Mental Health Counseling. You can find her, shameless plug, at newdaymhc.com. So narcissism exists on a continuum from normal, healthy, with a few narcissistic traits to a pathological, clinical, full-blown personality disorder. It is important to remember that the major distinction between people with narcissism traits and narcissistic personality disorder, NPD, is that narcissism is not a mental illness or permanent disorder. Normal narcissism, so I just want to go through these 3 really quick. Normal narcissism is what's called healthy narcissism. Adaptive, flexible, and empathetic. Humans by nature need admiration and attention. Everyone has a desire for success and love, but we all experience, in occasions, a lack of empathy. People like having power and control, and once in a while we may feel grandiose or self-important. So it's not uncommon for someone displaying normal, everyday narcissistic traits to hurt our feelings or push our boundaries. This is normal. We may classify these experiences as someone being selfish, aggressive, egotistical, or insensitive. The second class is narcissistic personality type. Further along the continuum is an unhealthy narcissism called narcissistic personality type. This is not a mental illness. This is a more extreme form of narcissism. While most of all the characteristics of NPD may be present, this kind of narcissism is considered within the normal range of personality. A person may appear obnoxious because they feel superior to others. They may have little or no empathy with the feelings, conditions, situation, or plight of others. Or they can feel entitled to the best of everything while looking down on those who show admiration for them. And finally, the clinical definition, pathological narcissism, or NPD. The diagnosis of a narcissistic personality disorder is determined through clinical evaluation of the person's pathological, manipulative, rigid, persistent, and causes significant distress and functional impairment. So, now that we've got all this out of the way, There are traits that I found that I sent you guys that I'll just put on the screen now. I will put on the screen, I promise. Of what the traits of a narcissistic traits, and from this book that Nadia gave me, which is the diagnostic manual, and tells all the traits of a narcissist. These are the 9 traits, and in this book it says if you have 5 of these traits or more all the time, then you possibly could have a narcissistic personality disorder. So just really quick, has a grandiose sense of importance, is preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success, power, believes that he or she is special and unique, requires excessive admiration, has a sense of entitlement. It is, my screen just went blank, sorry. It is impersonally exploitive, takes advantage of others, and lacks empathy, is often envious of others, and believes that they are envious of him or her, and shows arrogant, naughty behaviors or attitudes. So with that being said, let's bring everybody into the conversation. And I just thought it was important. Again, I'm not a doctor, clinician, therapist, or anything, but I do and want to get your guys' opinion. And Michelle, we'll start with you on. Do you think the word is used too loosely?
Yes. And that's why I was more than happy to come on here. I get hundreds of DMs every day and requests for podcast topics, and everybody who reaches out happens to be divorcing a narcissist. And for a long time, I thought maybe I am too. But when you really take a good look at it, it's like calling somebody who had a bad day depressed. Like it is too big of an umbrella term to just decide, he's a narcissist just because he displays what I call AEH. There's NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, and AEH, asshole ex-husband syndrome. Like they're very similar. So it's very hard. It's very hard to distinguish between the two. But in our day-to-day lives, myself and all of the people who follow me and reach out and vent about their exes, we all have very similar stories. But just because he's an asshole doesn't make him a narcissist, right? If he's a narcissist, he's definitely an asshole, but it doesn't go the other way. So I found that everybody was using this term, and I decided to really look into it. And it's very hard to label somebody that, because it's very hard to be diagnosed as such, because narcissists don't typically head into the psychiatrist's chair and say, hey, I really think I'm better than everybody and everyone's doing me wrong. Is there something wrong with me? You're not going to find that. So for me, it became, I can't touch on this subject and just, use this term so loosely, when it would be like saying every person who's sad right now and not feeling great is depressed. And that's a serious term to use also.
Yeah,
so,
and that's what I wanted to explain, that there are, this is a serious mental disorder, like bipolar or other ones that cause a lot of wreckage. And then there's the traits of it. And I like the way that that thing broke it down into 3 different traits that all of us sort of have a narcissistic, traits at some point. And then, there's those who have, them more prevalent. But Kate, do you think that the term, do you have anything that I said agree with or disagree with or want to add?
Yeah, I totally agree. And similar to Michelle, I'm everybody that I, come in contact with, joins my Facebook group, sends me messages. They're all just divorcing a narcissist. And I just don't think that we are having a crisis of narcissism in the world right now. I do think, right? Like, I do think
2020, who knows?
Well, we have a few of them out there right now.
Well, but that's my point, right? I do think that we have a crisis of entitlement and bad behavior and all sorts of things like, that are things like that are making the rounds, shall we say, right? And I do think that for example, some people in power right now may be giving people permission to act a little bit more belligerently and to treat women worse than they otherwise would. And I think that, we have the patriarchy rearing its head right now, grasping at trying to hold on to all the power. And I think this is being made manifest in lots of relationships. That still doesn't mean that your ex has narcissistic personality disorder. They could be displaying some traits of, being an asshole or being selfish or some narcissistic traits, but that doesn't make them a clinical narcissist.
Right. Okay,
and there are you.
Go ahead.
Sorry. No, I think you also can't discount. We get divorced, or a lot of us now are getting divorced from men that just seem intolerable to us, right? And so we're going to find those little traits that just like the way they spoke to us or the way they want to take control over co-parenting or whatever it is. We're going to hang on to those traits and just say, okay, this person is X, Y, and Z. Now, I do have clients who are divorcing true narcissists, and it is
totally me too, 100%.
I will never discount or diminish the disorder because I know it's real and I know a lot of women are dealing with it, but it is far beyond anything you can comprehend, and that's why I have my trusty little Venn diagram that I like to share.
Yes.
Yay.
Okay. I'm sitting in my daughter's classroom, so I'll play teacher right now.
Okay.
NPD, and here we have AEH, asshole ex-husband. NPD is a clinical disorder, horrible to deal with. AEH, horrible to deal with. Together, they both suck. So it's very hard to distinguish between the two. And I always like to show that, when I'm talking about this, because I don't like to give my clients false hope and saying, okay, he's a narcissist. Here's how we make that better. There's no making it better. He's an asshole ex-husband. Here's how we can find ways to communicate more effectively, right? So there's two very different things, and you need to be clear on what it is that you're dealing with so that you can deal with it appropriately.
Yes.
Susan,
Yeah.
As far as obviously a different area than coaching and dealing with clients one-on-one, what do you see as far as what I read, and do you agree or have anything to add or disagree with?
Oh, no, I mean, I have to agree with what everyone's saying. Having been on the legal side of this business for 30 years, I think this preponderance of people saying, oh, I'm divorcing a narcissist is a relatively new phenomenon. It was not something, it wasn't even a word in the vernacular, truly. Maybe high conflict, but not narcissist, borderline personality disorder. Those weren't words that got thrown around a lot 30 years ago. They weren't taught in law school. They now are. More, I think, not because we're seeing a surge in the number of actual NPDs, BPDs, and other disordered personalities, but because people are more aware of those personalities. But I think the real danger is exactly what Kate and Michelle have talked about. First of all, the person doing the diagnosing in almost all of the cases that we're talking about here is the person who's getting divorced from the person they want to call a narcissist. And I'm sorry, most of them, unlike your lovely wife, Nadia, do not have the ability to make such a diagnosis, right? That is, really, you can diagnose him as the asshole ex-husband. Absolutely. AEH is one of those things I think we all have the ability to diagnose someone. But as an attorney who has dealt with clinically diagnosed NPDs, BPDs, and other paranoid disordered people, schizophrenics, bipolar, I've dealt with them all in divorces. People with personality disorders get divorced. I mean, that is just, imagine, if you are in a relationship with someone who truly has a clinical disorder, they're likely to end up in a divorce. So I've dealt with them. But yeah, your average asshole is just somebody who has, switched from, at some point in the relationship, from us and making decisions based on we to making decisions based on themselves. And that's what happens in divorce. You are also probably taking part in making decisions that work best for you. And what brings out this, well, he must be a narcissist or she must be a narcissist is, well, they're not making decisions based on what is best for the family anymore, or best for me, or best for all of us. And, hey, face it, divorce is one of the worst, can be one of the worst experiences. It brings up all kinds of negative emotions. If there were ever a situation that was going to bring out anyone's inner asshole, it's going to be divorce.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you absolutely nailed it. I remember when Nikki and I split up, I remember sitting in my therapist's office, and I said to her, I think I am a narcissist. And her answer was my first exposure.
But if you were, you wouldn't have been able to say that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
you prove you're not a narcissist.
And that's
if
exactly
you think
what
you
she said. The difference, that was my first exposure to the difference between the clinical diagnosis and the colloquial definition. And she replied, there's no way somebody with a narcissistic personality disorder would come to a therapist and said they think they are a narcissist. She said you are just a wounded, hurt, and damaged person. Mind blown, right?
Yeah.
And then when I was looking at the traits this weekend and the traits that I shared, I recognized that a lot of them I had when I was going through my divorce. Not because I necessarily had a clinical narcissistic personality disorder, but because I was going through a situational process that pushed all my manhood buttons. And the behaviors were consistent with traits of narcissism. So I think from a man's standpoint anyways, that when you look at this list again, it's what happens when, at least for me, when those buttons of romance and finance and Susan, everything you said about people's, the emotions that come up during divorce that are gonna kick in, especially for men, a narcissistic or fight or flight or whatever you want to come and become an asshole.
Well, it's a bruised ego, and men do not handle bruised ego well. That's the bottom line.
And it's a loss of control. And I think that's a really important piece, right? Is that when someone who's used to having control starts to lose control, they often behave really badly. Mm-hmm. And that, again, doesn't make them a narcissist. It makes them someone who doesn't know how to deal with losing control and, being in power.
Right.
Well, and I think there's a huge issue here with this preponderance of or propensity for diagnosing your ex as a narcissist. Because once you do that, and once you've got that label in your head, you start to think that you're dealing with someone you can't deal with. And that goes to what Michelle said earlier. You can deal with and figure out better ways to better communicate with your but true narcissists, there's the only thing you can do with them, right, is biff them, right? There's nothing else. Just biff them and be done with it. We'll talk about that during this. But when someone's being an asshole, when you start to, really dig into they're a narcissist, and there's all these people out there right now, like sort of blowing that up. It's not just the people going through divorce that are blowing up the term narcissist. It's the people in the divorce world who are the professionals in divorce who are also blowing the phrase up and telling you, I can teach you how to deal with your narcissist. I can help you beat your narcissist. Those things are out there. You're not going to, what is beating a narcissist? What is, it other than with a stick, which is against the law. And as your attorney, I advise you all not to do it.
Allegedly.
You heard
it.
You can get away with it. Attorney. You said it.
Well, and that's exactly why I wanted to have this conversation, Susan. And we've, talked about doing, something on it, and it's exactly that. And at least this conversation and what we try to do on the stream is to keep it solution based, right? So, this, whether it's clickbait or whatever people's motivations are, I'm not gonna, judge, but there has to be a solution, because there was a solution for me, right? As a man who was probably displaying those narcissistic, tendencies, if not bordering on NPD. So when you see a client, how can you educate them on, and Kate and Michelle take this, how do you educate them on not dealing with NPD, but maybe dealing with somebody and educating them, or is that not part of the process?
Oh,
I mean, it is for me, definitely.
It is for me too, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, go ahead, Kate.
I just wanted, I had a client once who was talking about, like, she was so fixated on trying to figure out if her ex was a narcissist. And I think that what it was giving her was some kind of container, right? She could put it in a container, and if she could label him the narcissist, then she didn't really have anything to look at, and she didn't really have any, she could sort of absolve herself of responsibility. And in the work that I do, I'm not working with him. I'm not interested in his process. I'm interested in your process. So what if we stop labeling him? What if, like, it doesn't matter? Like, what if it just didn't matter? Where would that leave you? And what that did was open up for her. And this is what happens with most of my clients when we're dealing with this. It sort of opened up for her. It's like, well, if I don't label him, then I'm not labeling me. First of all, there's nothing wrong with me that I chose a narcissist, right? We don't have to go down that path. But also, it just gave her the ability to take more responsibility and also have some compassion and grace for the wounded man that she was divorcing. And it gave her the opportunity to be able to go into this process with, compassion and an open heart and, all of those things, which then made the divorce process that much better. Right? Yeah. Like, yeah.
Ahead,
my process is not far off, Kate. I think, something I explain to every client, and they'll all come to me and say, my ex is making my life a living hell, this, that, and the other thing. I say, regardless of who he is and what he is, you have to get really clear before you sign my client service agreement that we're not here to change him. Nothing we do is going to change him, how he treats you, how he behaves, how he reacts. None of that. We're here to focus on only the things you can control, which is yourself, your reactions, your outlook, your perspective. And that's a hard pill to swallow, because a lot of women come exasperated after having dealt with this angry person for so long, and they just want it to stop. And I have to make them understand that whether he's a narcissist or he's an asshole doesn't matter to me, because we're not worried about him. We can't do anything about it. We're not going to find the magic pill together. Like it becomes a matter of how am I, as a mother, as a person moving on, going to deal with this. And so that's kind of how we tackle that. And I always hear, that narcissist word in the first, in the 15-minute consultation. My ex is a narcissist. I'm like, oh, okay. So tell me about you, cause I get it. This is the word we use to describe difficult people now. Yeah. And whether it applies or not means nothing to a woman's ability to move on from divorce, in my opinion.
Well, that is beautifully said. And I think the label thing, as I started off talking about, it's too easy to label. But it's also, for me anyways, and I want to get you guys' input on this, is when you see somebody a certain way, you have a theory about them, right? So, Nikki, look, a brat. I would use another B word, but it's 2020 and we don't want to do that. But she, I saw her as a brat, so if I have that perception and that label of her, I have a theory that she is a brat. So everything she says, everything she does, every email correspondence, whatever, I'm looking for evidence to back up my theory. Yep. And so I don't know if that works in the same way as narcissists. If you see your ex as a narcissist, you're going to be looking for evidence to back up that theory.
Absolutely. I think that's human nature. No matter what your theory is, you're always looking for evidence to back it up.
Yes.
Right?
100%.
So if you're looking for evidence that, like, wow, this person is really hurt and wounded, and look, the narcissistic wound is the same wound that creates codependency and narcissism, right? So, like, most of us have the same kind of wound. It just manifests differently in different people. So if you're looking for the wound, it actually opens up compassion. You can see the wound, right? What you focus on shows up, right?
Absolutely.
I just wanted to say this other thing that I think is so important, because we use this term, and just so people understand how rare NPD really is, that it only affects between 0.5 and 1% of the general population. So I think when we frame this, narcissist, is my ex a narcissist? if I were a betting man, I would bet that he is not clinically, has NPD.
Yeah.
And now
Yeah.
might go ahead, Michelle.
And even if he could be, he's very unlikely to be diagnosed.
Right.
By somebody with a DSM manual who can say, yes, good sir, this is you. I mean, it's just not going to happen.
Well, they
Right.
don't generally
might
go for therapy.
Right, exactly.
Therapy, but they might go for a psych eval for a custody agreement. But again, like that's actually not going to impact it, probably, right? Because it's not child abuse to have NPD. But the other thing I think that it's important is that, like we talked about, like you said in the beginning, Ben, is that narcissism does exist on a spectrum.
Right.
So when someone says my ex is a narcissist, they may be a narcissist. They probably don't have NPD because, again, that's very rare, but they could be somewhere on the narcissistic spectrum.
Right.
But it actually doesn't fucking matter.
Right.
Well, and if you heard what Ben said earlier, almost everyone's somewhere on it because there is healthy narcissism. We all do need to be somewhat self-centered at times in order to navigate life. Divorce is actually one of those times when we need to have a little self-centeredness.
Yes.
If you are all, I'm all about collaborative. I'm all about mediation. I'm all about sitting down and reworking your family and your life so that it goes and works best for everyone. But you can't just go in and give everything away because that's not going to keep you healthy and whole. And if you're not healthy and whole, then the whole family doesn't work well together in its new iteration. You have to hold your future and your goals and desires at the forefront for part of this process as well. If that's a healthy narcissism, that's a healthy self-centeredness.
Yes.
So
Yes.
In the context of the hurdles that this label or this, the traits cause, I hear from, and I don't mean to simplify it, but from, Kate and Michelle, that regardless of whether he's diagnosed or she's diagnosed or, but it doesn't matter. And it's, you can only you only have control of how you react to that person.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's possible that, like, if you did get an NPD diagnosis, that actually might be useful. Might be useful in certain circumstances, right? Sure, right, because you would respond differently to someone with NPD than you would with someone who's just being a dick, perhaps. But yeah, I think it pretty much ultimately doesn't necessarily matter.
Right.
Well, from a legal perspective, if you were to get that holy grail diagnosis of your ex that says they are a malignant narcissist, at the one end of the spectrum that Ben just mentioned is like from 0.5% to 1% of the population, then that may have an effect on a custodial situation because a narcissist at that level could present a danger to the children. That is a truly like psychopathic almost level of narcissism. So yes, it could have, but for the average person who's saying that their ex is a narcissist, it's really also, one thing I always focus on is it's a way to deflect blame from yourself as well. Because if your ex is a narcissist, then just poor you're a victim of narcissistic abuse. I hear that term just as often as I hear narcissist. And again, I'm not making light of it because if you are the victim of a true narcissist, it is at a level of abuse. But it's a way of deflecting. Oh, great. So if they're labeled a narcissist, none of this is my fault. Mm-hmm. I own none of it. And Ben, this is one of your, calling cards is you have to own your own side of the street. And, Michelle and I actually taped a podcast episode for my show today, and we talked about there's no power in being a victim. But if you call your ex a narcissist, you're making yourself a victim. You're owning that role.
Well, yeah, and that's precisely the problem. And then what also I see happening, I could say almost all of my clients right now, right off the bat, deem their ex is narcissist. And so, it's not even worth fighting for what I want on the parenting plan because he'll never cave. And I'm like, so you're just not even going to go, you assign this label and then you decide you're just going to throw up your hands and give up. And I know we mentioned that earlier, that it's like assigning the label is essentially going to fire back at you. It's going to come back in your face when you just say, he can't change. I can't argue this with him. So I'm just going to give up and concede. No. We can't do that without trying. No way. And that's where the label becomes even more dangerous.
Yeah. And I will add to that I think that this is where I work with clients on this, and I think, Michelle, we're totally in line on this, which is that this is where women's empowerment, like the rubber meets the road, right? Because who you have to be to stand up for yourself and to, go for the parenting plan that you want or whatever, right? Who you have to be to meet that really strong personality. Because, one of the other things that narcissism is code word for is someone who's really controlling and dominant and has a really strong personality. And who you have to be to meet them on the divorce playing field takes something.
Oh, yeah.
And 9 times out of 10, who you have been in your marriage up to this point for the dynamic to work is the complete opposite. So now we are in fucking training. We are in boot camp. We are in emotional and psychological boot camp to get you to be who you need to be a divorced mom, to be sharing custody, to be, all of the things, and to be advocating for yourself from here on out against someone who's really used to you not advocating for yourself.
And you know what happens then, people? Kate, I'm just going to piggyback off of this.
Yeah. Go.
All of this narcissistic behavior tends to stop and slow down. And all of a sudden you have a good grasp on how to handle things, and you're not, flailing every time your ex sends you a text message, and things start to shift and waters become calmer. And the path of co-parenting becomes just a bit easier because you've now taken a little bit of control back and learned, I don't have to concede and be scared of this person. I can stand my ground, set my boundaries, feel like a strong woman, and move on with my life. And this person is going to see that and stop picking at me and pushing all my buttons because I won't allow it. And all of a sudden, this person doesn't seem so narcissistic anymore. And it's lovely. They still have those AEH qualities. We all do. I'm sure I'm an AEW all the time, but it comes and goes in waves, I assure you. Things start to calm down when you realize that you have the control over how you handle it and what you're going to give light to and energy to and a response to.
Yep.
It's so well said. And I think the one thing that, Nikki in my situation, and if she were here, she I don't know if she understood this at the time, but what I was going through, I don't think she saw me as that person. And, because I was that wounded, hurt man, and all the FU buttons to my ego were being pushed, the romance and finance buttons, as I acted out what looked like, smelled like, felt like, these traits that we went through, but, it wasn't who I was. So how she reacted was just to give me a little space and not sort of add, and that's maybe not her responsibility, but at the same time, she didn't add fuel, to the fire. So I don't know if that's, how you coach people or when they're, Susan, when they're in you're mediating with them, how you react to people, and do you recommend that people be the, lack of a better word, bigger person?
I always say take the high road, because in the end that will not come back to haunt you. That's not really as much the dynamic in this narcissist victim paradigm or pseudo narcissist victim paradigm. What really you see happening is once someone has labeled their ex a narcissist, or they believe that's what they're dealing with, they will continue to rail on in the hopes that they are going to change the behavior of the other person. And the reality is, especially if what you're dealing with is a person with a personality disorder, especially a narcissist, you are never going to change them. But that is by far the most common behavior that I see on behalf of the non-personality disordered spouse, is that constant running on the gerbil wheel of, if I just write them one more email that's 15 pages long, where I cut and paste from 12 other sources and I quote Dr. Spock and tell them why what they're doing isn't good for the kids, they're just, this time they're gonna get it. Right. And they are never going to get it. And all you just did is exhaust yourself, create a false expectation that this was going to work this time on the millionth and one time, and then create for yourself this huge fall off a cliff. Because once again, your hard work, I mean, I have clients who spend, ladies, chime in here, who spend weeks, days, hours drafting these like epistles of you could be better emails to their spouse, thinking that this is going to change them. It's never going to happen.
I'm dying over here because I was that person in the beginning. I'm like, if I am the most eloquent I can be here, I'm a writer for a living. I have to be able to get my point across in this here email. I've made those mistakes so many times, but you live and you learn. And, you know, what you essentially give your energy to will continue. And that's just the bottom line. It's as simple as that.
Yep. Absolutely. I have the same conversation with women about emotional abuse, right? Which is all tied up. This conversation is all tied up with that, right? And it's the same thing. Like, they'll send them emails and send them articles and like, see, this is what emotional abuse is. This is what you're doing, expecting them to be like, oh, oh, I get it now. I'm an abuser.
I see the
I'll
light.
No, that's literally not how this works.
Right, not at all.
Never.
It
never works that way.
The person who needs to know that you're being abused is you.
Right.
And what are you going to do with that? If that's what's happening, right?
Yes.
If that's what's happening, right?
Yes.
The person
Yes.
who needs to know is you. I have the same thing about sexual coercion, right? Women talk about like, how do I get him to stop? Get him to understand that I don't want to have sex and like I feel so bad about it. And I'm like, your body, your choice. You say no. And the person who needs to know that it's your body, your choice is you. Because if you're asking the question, you actually, I think, don't really know that.
Right.
And there's a million reasons why you don't that make perfect sense in today's society. But we're the person that needs to know.
And here's what I think happens, at least within the population of women that I work with. I find that it's us empathetic people pleasers who end up getting divorced and, have such a hard time separating ourselves from the idea that we no longer have to take care of this person and we're no longer responsible for their feelings.
Yes.
I knew with every fiber of my being I needed to get out of my marriage, but still to this day, I'll find moments where I'm like, I just want to help him, but we are women and we are nurturers. And especially when you're in a relationship where somebody might have a little bit more control over you, you naturally sort of want to just please them and make them happy. And then you come out of this marriage, they're used to you being that way. You're used to you being that way. And it's very hard to flip the script sometimes. Yep. I'm sensitive to that. And that's essentially why I work with the women I work with. But, the fact that he had that control over you, right? It sucks. It's really hard to break that pattern and set the boundaries and turn it all around. But again, that we get what we've allowed. And I hate to say that, but these people, I can say like, I eventually stopped fighting back with my ex when we were married because I just couldn't fight anymore. So I kind of just stopped standing up for myself or whatever the case may be. And so it
what
really
effect did that have when you did give up? I mean, give up's not the right word, but when you let go.
Yeah, I emotionally shut down essentially in the marriage. And, if you were to interview my ex, he'll tell you that I was checked out. It was like I wasn't even there. And it's true. I think women, when they shut down emotionally and feel they have nothing left to give, that's what happens. And that's what happened to us. Like, I felt like I was fighting and fighting and fighting and running on the hamster wheel and couldn't fight anymore. So I just was done. Like, it was all, I had like exorcised the demons. There was nothing left. I was just like this vapid being going through the motions of my marriage every day. And so coming out of that, and now me saying, no, you can't just show up to take her whenever you want. We're going to have a schedule, or sorry, I'm not going to give you more details than you want right now. Like, that was, first of all, very hard. It took me a long time to learn to do, and very hard for him to accept. Not because he's a narcissist, not because he was being an asshole, but because we had a dynamic for a long time that was really hard to break.
Yep.
So there are a couple questions that I want to get to in the chat.
Okay.
So is there a website to determine what category someone is on, I think, or one?
There are many, but you know, that you can read through even WebMD will come up with all of the traits. I would say, I think one of you mentioned if you meet like most out of all of them, then maybe
9 is
5 out of 9.
Yeah.
But also, again, does it matter?
Right. I mean, honestly, unless you're dealing with a malignant narcissist, which is frankly probably not what you're dealing with. I've been a divorce attorney for 30 years. I have one case where someone was diagnosed with, you know, that level of narcissism. Yeah. But what you really are looking for are coping mechanisms, ways to manage the behaviors, whether they're, yes, thank you very much. Here's my, Biff is my Bible. I also love Transcending High Conflict Divorce and certainly Magic Words by Lindsay Ellison. But the number one resource, Bill Eddy, Bill Eddy, Bill Eddy. You've got to go to the highconflictinstitute.com. Every book by Bill Eddy, Bill Eddy, Bill Eddy is, I mean, I give this thing out like candy. This will change your life. Whether your ex is high conflict or, you know, just your average, not even asshole, this is going to change because you don't, like, I love what Michelle just said a second ago, where, you know, I'm not going to give you more information than you need right now. I'm not going to answer every question that you have. It's boundaries. You have to be able to learn to set your boundaries with your ex. You are yes, you are still parents, but you are no longer enmeshed in each other's lives the same way. And if you can't pull yourself out of that and set those healthy boundaries, whether they be, you know, high conflict or not, your life is not going to move forward. You're going to stay in that relationship. Yeah. Which is
and you know, I just want to say too that it took me years to figure this out.
Me too, Kate. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, for anyone who's watching and feeling shitty about themselves and like they're screwing it up, you're not. This is why Michelle and I do the work that we do. You know, this is why we're coaches, because because we didn't have that. You know, I didn't have someone guiding me through this process and through this letting go and setting healthy boundaries and like all of that shit. It took years. So, yeah, so I just don't, there is help out there. You've got coaches that will help you through it. There's amazing books that were not written when I was going through this, I don't think, or maybe it was. But anyway, I just don't want people feeling shitty about themselves for getting this quote wrong. Like,
yeah, I'm happy you're saying that, because it's we're already riddled with guilt and anxiety when we're going through divorce, and the shame we feel just for, you know, having to go through the process is hard enough. You can't beat yourself up because you're having a hard time dealing with your ex. Like, that's just what divorce is. It's learning to deal with your ex, especially if you're moving into a co-parenting relationship. And, you know, I just want to say final thoughts, whether he's a narcissist or an asshole or a little bit of both, I feel you and I'm sensitive to it. But my point in all of this is that whatever he is not, means nothing. It's all on you. You have the power to let his behavior affect you or not, let it bleed into your co-parenting decisions, let it keep you a victim. Like Susan said, her and I had a good chat about that today. The bottom line is it's all on you. And if you have a difficult time setting boundaries, I'll give you my tried and true Tip, no is a full sentence. That is a boundary. No response is also setting a boundary. That is saying, I do not give my energy to, abusive or emotionally controlling questions, responses, thoughts, word vomit texts that you're going to send. So those are the two easiest way to start setting boundaries. Ignore or say no.
Yeah.
Very good. Susan, can you hold up the books again? We had somebody who requested so she could write them down. Biff by Bill Eddy.
And then Magic Words by Lindsay Ellison.
And then what's the high conflict?
Transcending High Conflict Divorce. Who's that by?
Can't hear you.
You're muted. You're muted, honey.
Sorry, I was coughing, so I muted myself. Her name's Virginia Gilbert. She's a therapist in Los Angeles. She's amazing. You've got to meet her, Kate. She's right there with you, and you'll love her. One thing I want to say, and Kate knows, and Michelle knows, I am so, as a divorce attorney, as a divorce mediator, I am so strong. I so strongly believe that people who are going through divorce need a coach. And I think in this conversation, one of the things that comes through really clearly is just how much what these two ladies do can help you. Because, as they just pointed out, this is not something that you move through quickly. This is not something that's easy. They both have been through it, and it took them years. This is one of those instances where you need that filter, you need that guide, and if you get it, your divorce will be faster, smoother, less expensive, less traumatic. I promise you that. I know this as someone who's been in this field forever. So please look into getting yourself a coach. It is not an indulgence.
Thank you, Susan. It is a necessity, especially if you want to shed yourself of that victim mindset and feel more empowered going through it. I mean, why not have, I wrote an article once about every woman needs a divorce Sherpa. This is way before I was a coach. Whether it's a best friend, a neighbor, somebody you met at the gym who has also been through it. You need to hang on to somebody at that point and get advice that is actionable and neutral, not, well, fuck him and the horse he rode in on. No, that doesn't help us. We need to know, fuck him and the horse he rode in on, how are we going to steer that horse in a different direction?
And I think that's where the labels also, when you have a theory of somebody, that you're looking for sometimes evidence, be it friends, colleagues, to sort of say, oh yeah, he is an asshole or she is an asshole or, whatever it is. And I also have to just say, as being the only man on this live stream, that, the same advice works both ways.
Absolutely.
The same advice I would give to a guy, a man going through a divorce, is very similar to what Kate and Michelle just talked about, and that is the powerlessness over people's actions and people's behaviors. And you do have a power to control how you react. And sort of the theme of our happy divorce and the theme of actually co-parenting today with Nikki is, would I rather be right or would I rather be happy? And I think that those two are completely different most of the times. Because if I want to be right, then I get into that narcissistic behavior of preaching and but when I'd rather be happy, I can leave that stuff. It's really setting boundaries on me, and not always just setting boundaries on Nikki, but it's how I react to it.
Great.
And so there was another question about, do all narcissists cheat? And I think that the answer to that is yes, it does check some of the boxes of lacking empathy and willing to recognize your behaviors and arrogant and naughty behaviors. So I don't know if they're synonymous, but
I don't think they are.
I mean, almost all unhappily married people cheat or manifest some behaviors that are either emotional cheat. I mean, people in unhappy relationships find happiness elsewhere, whatever that might be. It might be happiness in a job and being an A-type personality, working all the time. It might be, so do narcs cheat? A myriad of people cheat. It's not necessarily a symptom of narcissism. You didn't have it in your little list of 9 criteria there.
Behavior is definitely right. The behavior.
I think they're more inclined to do so and not really give a shit. Right. But I don't think a narcissist is definitely going to cheat, just like a cheater is not definitely a narcissist.
Right.
Yeah.
So as we wrap this thing up, because I only can afford Kate and Susan and Michelle for an hour, is
Our
tools.
first job is to go overtime.
What's that?
Yeah, that's right. Let's keep talking. Quick. Time and a half.
But as far as tools, advice, you have people dealing with, I don't even want to say narcissist, but a difficult person, either the husband or the wife. And I think, again, part of it is because the feelings and emotions that divorce sucks, right? So I think it brings out narcissistic personality, or traits rather, in everybody, in both parties. So what advice can you, quick advice, free tips that you can give people?
Divorce doesn't, the process does.
Touche. I stand corrected. Absolutely.
I'll let you two fabulous ladies start with the tips.
Well, I already gave mine. I mean, especially if you're dealing with, a high conflict personality or someone who's very difficult to deal with, get help. And that's a coach. I love therapists too. I'm not in any way saying the therapist shouldn't also be on your team. Therapists deal with you and your past. Your coach is going to help you with dealing with your high conflict or just difficult ex. They're going to help you with communication. I always call Kate the divorce whisperer. The things that someone can tell you and help you with are incredibly valuable and will help you through this process. Always my number one tip.
I love it. I mean, there's so many things. I think the thing that I always say is that divorce is fertile ground for personal development. It is fertile. I don't think there's any more fertile ground, right? And it is an opportunity for you to do things differently, for you to grow, and for you to look beyond the limited, I think, sort of limited mindset of putting someone in a box and then absolving you of, responsibility or whatever it is, right? And I get that sometimes we just want to understand things a little bit better, and sometimes it's helpful and empowering to be like, oh shit, that's what's going on, right? But keeping your side of the street squeaky ass clean and making sure that you are doing the work on yourself to grow and empower yourself to be a stronger, more kick-ass human that will choose differently the next time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
that's a huge part of what we talked about in the podcast today. Everybody tune in on Monday to hear more from Michelle on that.
My tip would essentially be, whoever you are divorcing, whoever you were married to, does not matter. It matters. Peace of mind is a wonderful thing. It is priceless. It matters that you learn to stop fighting battles that don't need to be fought. My tip is just like I said before, start with setting a very simple boundary, and that's not responding to attempts at conflict, attempts to, pissed on your parade, or to put, throw dirt on your name. A lot of times, what we do is we get trapped in this, your ex will text you and say, this is all because of you, and you did this, and you, and you want to be like, but you were the worst husband ever. There's no point in responding. Just focus on yourself and your own peace of mind and your happiness right now, because nothing matters more.
Well, thank you. And Jody said she joined late. Is Michelle a coach? Yes, Jody, Michelle is a coach. And on that, Michelle, where can people find you and get some of your wisdom?
My website is momsmovingon.com. You can learn more about working together one-on-one, joining one of my group coaching workshops, or becoming a member of my new membership community, which is going to be awesome. I'm really excited about that. That's the place for somebody who wants a coach, needs advice, is not ready to commit, wants to learn more about the divorce process, cannot afford a coach. We will have free monthly webinars on very pertinent topics just like this one, and it will be at no extra charge if you're a member, and it's really affordable, and I've spent months putting together great information. So you can find it at momsmovingon.com. The podcast is Moms Moving On. That is everywhere podcasts stream, and on Instagram I'm at the Michelle Dempsey.
Follow her Instagram. It's hysterical.
It is hysterical, but it's the
And
most,
on point.
it's so on point, and even for somebody with a penis, it is.
I have lots of divorced dads who reach out and they thank me. They're like,
Yeah.
you know what, this applies to me too. Thank you.
And I think that's, look, one day somebody's gonna, crack the male vulnerability safe, and it's gonna be like getting into Fort Knox, because it definitely, there's a lot of coaches in the space. There are not a lot of male coaches, but the ironic thing is a lot of what Michelle,
Come on over.
Michelle, but the ironic thing is what Michelle and Kate and Susan and everybody talks about. It's synonymous. It doesn't matter what sex it is. I mean, yes, there are some characteristic differentiators, but really at the same time, it's about powerless and just taking care of your shit, as Kate would so eloquently say.
She would.
Michelle, thank you so much. You are a true warrior, and
Thank you.
An influencer in the space, and just spreading such great things out of there. And my co-hosts. Really, does it matter if it's a divorce guide or just survival? I mean, you got to survive first, right?
I do.
Well, I appreciate it. This has been a great discussion, and Michelle, thank you for your time, and Susan, Kate, as always, thank you for yours. We'll be back.
I love you guys.
I don't know if we're going to be
Thanks for
back
having me.
next week,
Michelle?
because Susan's put in a vacation request form.
Oh,
So,
I wish it
time
were
off.
vacation.
but we will be back on the 21st, I think it is, and we're going to be celebrating National Recovery Month, and do another personality trait issue that sort of manifests itself like this narcissist and people who are suffering with addiction and going through divorce. We're going to have Dr. Elizabeth Cohen back and to talk about divorce, drugs, and alcohol. Yay.
Awesome.
So tune in. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Feel that.